my name is Jennifer Cialone, and I am a medical student in my fourth year of medical school at the University of Rochester. And I was awarded a TL1 award through the CTSI and did a year of research between my third and fourth year of medical school. I had hoped to do a year of research during medical school just to kind of get exposure, specifically to clinical research, because I had done bench research in undergraduate and I wanted exposure to a different type of research. And so I heard about the CTSI as a potential source for funding and a good opportunity to learn more about clinical research. And so I applied for an award through them during my third year of medical school with the hopes of taking the year out between my third and fourth. So the disease that we study is Batten disease, and it's a neurodegenerative disease in kids. So it's a disease where kids will develop normally for a certain amount of time, and then they regress in their skills, and they sort of go backwards in a lot of ways. And it is a very rare disease, and there are a lot of different forms of it, but the one that we study is one that we call the juvenile form. So the onset is usually in the school age years of 5 to 7, typically we see, and it usually starts with blindness. So kids lose their sight. And then through the years, they develop a number of other problems, including difficulty with movement. They start to slow down quite a bit and have a difficult time walking by the end of the disease. A difficult time with cognitive abilities. So they lose their cognitive abilities and develop a sort of dementia. And they also have seizures. And it's, unfortunately, it's a fatal disease with no cure at this time. This is a quantitative assessment of telemedicine of the Unified Batten Disease Rating Scale. So essentially, it was a project looking at how to measure different aspects of the disease in kids. So we have a rating scale that we developed several years ago, and it quantifies the disease for the children at that point in time. And so since we see these kids over the years multiple times, we've been able to use it sort of as a natural history type of tool, and we hope to use it as an outcomes measurement for clinical trials. But my project was to see if it would actually be possible to administer this tool remotely using telemedicine so that families wouldn't necessarily have to travel, to our site at Rochester or to any other, centered site where they would go. And it would allow them to still participate in research studies in that way. And we found that it was actually quite successful doing it via telemedicine. Research is not really an independent, alone kind of endeavor. And I really like working with people. And I actually think it's a really great opportunity to work with people who come from all different areas, different expertises, different viewpoints. And being in that kind of community, I think, is really enriching and really exciting. I worked with Jonathan Mink, who's the chair of child neurology here at Rochester, and he was fantastic as a mentor. I think that he allowed me to kind of grow at my own pace and to help me out when I needed it, especially in the beginning, trying to figure out what I was doing, and to kind of let me take the project where I wanted to and to take the experience where I wanted to. So he was incredibly supportive, and he's an amazing, amazing physician and researcher, so I really look up to him too. One thing I'd love to emphasize is how important it was that I had the group of people that I worked with, because, Jonathan Mink and everybody was so supportive, and they supported me in everything that I was doing, really helpful, gave me great feedback, and I think working with them was a huge part of why my year is successful in any way. I love working with children, so pediatrics was kind of a given thing for me, especially from working in my clerkships in my third year and working with families and kids. That was a for sure. And the part of neurology that I like is that there's so much that we don't really understand about it, and there are so many changes that are going on in the field. I think it's really exciting. And it's also, I think that kids who have neurologic disorders, it's a very tough thing for families to understand and to cope with. So I thought it was a particularly great chance to really work with families in that sort of sensitive and emotional time. So I'm drawn to it for the social and emotional aspects as much as I am for the intellectual. I would say my first real exposure to Batten disease was at the beginning of my research year. Every year there's a parent support conference, the Batten Disease Support and Research Association, or BDSRA as we call it. They host a parent support group meeting each summer where a lot of parents and children and researchers will come and get together and talk about, emotional aspects of the disease as well as current research going on. And that's actually where we see a lot of the children and do a lot of our data collection. That was my first exposure during the summer that I began. And I think meeting those families and seeing those children, I was drawn in many ways. One being the families are so strong and what they do for their kids is amazing. And they are so dedicated to helping out with the research in it, even if it might not help their child, help another one, which is very humbling. And also the kids, they're incredible. They're so resilient in what they can do. And I think that's what really drew me in initially, seeing the kids throughout the year as well. And I think the last one I went to was particularly hard because it was after working with it for the year and feeling like I was beginning to understand it better. Seeing a lot of the kids who are at the beginning of the disease and seeing the kids at the end of the disease, I think had a much more profound effect on me. Mm-hmm. But it also made me want to continue this because there's so much more to do for these kids. There's one family with two sons who I've met really further along in their teenage years, which is kind of far along into the disease, and they're impaired in a lot of the ways that kids are impaired, but they have so much joy in so many of the things that they do, and the parents are amazing, and they keep the kids involved. And there's a video of the older boy. He's part of the baseball team that his dad coaches, and he got to hit one of the balls and run around the bases, and it was just, it's amazing to see what the families will do to keep the kids to have as normal a life as possible. And another family where there's a little boy that's so smart and so funny, and he is completely blind, but just, full of joy and always really wonderful to see at the conferences. It was amazing. I got a chance to explore research in a way that I had not done before, from, working with a team to kind of develop a project or understand how you work through questions in a research project, to analyzing data, more about statistics than I ever knew before, and all the way through presenting posters and publishing papers. I also got to travel quite a bit, go to conferences, and see research communities in a different kind of setting. So I went to a Clinical Translational Science Institute, CTSI conference that was held in Washington, D.C., and we had heard about it, I think, at the beginning of the year at some point, and gotten some emails about it. And I thought, okay, this would be good. I'll try it out and see what it's all about. And it was actually really very interesting because it was a bunch of people who all do a certain type of research as far as being clinical or translational, but they did it in all different fields and all different methods were used. And it was unlike any of the conferences I had been to before, which had all been very focused on kind of one area of medicine. And so that was neat because when I went and I presented my poster, I got to talk to people who were from all different fields, who had questions about the disease and about my research because they, didn't know anything about it because they came from a different area. And I felt like that was a really, really interesting conversation to have, to kind of go back to the basics to help me understand it better, because I had to explain it, more fully. And it was also neat to walk around and see other people's projects and see what other people have done. And there are people from all levels of training. So it was kind of an interesting blend of people, and I liked being a part of that. Currently, I am applying for residency positions in child neurology, which is a combined program. So you do 2 years of pediatrics training and 3 years of child neurology training, or actually neurology training overall. And I am currently in the process of interviewing for residencies, and next year we'll start at one. And I think that then down the road from that, hopefully starting a career in academic medicine, which is a way to blend clinical work, so seeing patients, with research, hopefully clinical research, and then also teaching. And so I think that this experience with CTSI is absolutely a huge reason for why I'm going into this residency and why I have these ideals for academic medicine, because I found that it was very doable. You know, I have people that I got to work with who do exactly what I want to do, and if I hadn't had that chance to kind of see what their lives were like, I don't know if I would have seen that it's really possible to do that and be happy and have it be fulfilling. It was one of the best decisions I've made.